First, on the subject of legal action, Utah Senator Mike Lee has proposed a bill which would protect the tax-exempt statuses of faith-based entities like churches who decline to compromise their beliefs at the altar of political correctness. I mean, it is still a free country, is it not? Earlier, I spoke with the senator and I asked him what he's doing to protect people who are religious.
I've introduced a bill to protect religious institutions and religious individuals in that specific circumstance. My bill, which has 11 Republican co-sponsors so far, says that the federal government may not discriminate, may not retaliate, may not unkindly or retaliatorily treat any institution or person on the basis of a religious belief that marriage is between a man and a woman. So the idea of this is to say, let's keep the federal government out of this. Let's not let the federal government retaliate against somebody based on their religious belief about what marriage is. We think that this is the answer to the threat posed by religious liberty by this potential set of problems.
Yeah, and the president before, and you've noted this, that the president himself has said he's fine with churches having their tax-exempt statuses, still practicing their beliefs. So really, he should have no problems in supporting this bill.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the things that prompted this legislation was a comment made by the President of the United States shortly after the Supreme Court issued its decision last summer in United States versus Windsor. And he said words to the effect that, look, I don't want to take away the tax-exempt status of any church just because it doesn't perform gay marriages. So this takes him at his word and says that, you know, we need to be protecting institutions and persons who, motivated by a religious belief, decide that marriage is between a man and a woman.
Right.
That's all this does, and there's really no good faith basis, I believe, for opposing it.
All right, absolutely. Speaking of retaliation by government agencies, were you surprised that the FBI has said this week that they are not going to file criminal charges in the case of the IRS persecution?
You know, I suppose that I should say that I'm surprised. But these days, very few things surprise me anymore. This is an administration that has covered its own tracks over and over and over again, especially as it relates to the abuse of the immense power that's concentrated within the federal government. And here in Washington, D.C., I mean, look, we've got the world's largest, most powerful tax collection agency aggressively manipulating the system for blatantly partisan, political, and nefarious purposes, and nothing happens. It's disgraceful. Unfortunately, it's not all that shocking.
Right, absolutely. You tweeted a photo, what was it, earlier today or yesterday, showing this big stack of papers, a bill, another regulatory bill from something that involves another regulatory agency. What exactly is Congress going to be doing in 2014 to take back some of the power that has been ceded to these regulatory agencies?
Yeah, so the picture you were looking at was a picture that I tweeted out of last year's Federal Register, which is the annual cumulative index of all new federal regulations. Wow. Last year, that took up 80,000 pages. That compared to a tiny stack on top of that cabinet that you can also see in the picture of about 800 pages of legislative text passed by Congress. And see, what that shows us is that most of the body of law, measured by volume, that's produced by the federal government each year, is not even written by the men and women who are constitutionally empowered to make law, that is, members of Congress. And so the whole problem with this is that the men and women who are writing these regulations, however well-educated or well-intentioned they might be, are not accountable to the people because the people don't have the right to fire them, either every 6 years in the case of senators or 2 years in the case of House of Representatives. They are nameless, faceless bureaucrats that operate with the complete protection of the federal civil service system.
Yeah, that's one thing. Well, I look forward to seeing the action on that because obviously with the EPA issuing new rules for power companies and it's causing quite a stir here in Texas and in other parts of the country. So we look forward to seeing the pushback on that. I wanted to get your reaction, though, Senator, to something that the president said earlier, specifically more executive actions. He had said that I've got a pen and I've got a phone and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive action. Your reaction to that?
The president may have a pen and a phone, but I have a Constitution. And that Constitution says that in order for us to make law, we have to have action by the House, action by the Senate, and then action by the presidential pen. It's not until that moment that law is made. It's not until that moment that he can really act appropriately unless the Constitution or a law passed pursuant to the Constitution somehow authorizes him to act. So it's not enough for the president simply to say, you know, look, there's a will, there's a way. And as long as I want something to be done, it will be. And if Congress doesn't act, I'm going to go it alone. That doesn't work. That doesn't work under the Constitution, and we can't let him get away with that.
Before I let you go, Senator, I have to ask you, how does it feel to be ranked, I think it was by the Heritage Foundation, as the fifth, air quotes, poorest senator?
Well, look. We all come here from our own backgrounds, and there are those who have come here in relative poverty and emerged later as multimillionaires. The place has not had that effect on me, and I don't expect it to anytime soon. So, you know, I suppose it's a good feeling in a way.
And this is why you're popular, Senator Lee. Senator Mike Lee of Utah, thanks again so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll discuss the Supreme Court.